Hello, friends of poetry and friends of the Florence Library. My name is Angela Edwins. I am the poet laureate of the Pee Dee region of South Carolina, and I would like to talk a bit about why poetry is important to me. I've loved poetry since I was a young kid. I read poetry that was written for children and just fell in love with the way the language worked. And I think what I fell in love with is what those who look at poetry and can seriously appreciate it, which I think is everyone if they give it a chance, will always fall in love with. And that is the fact that poetry is a beautiful bridge between story and sound that brings together for the reader or the listener of the poem, because poems are typically written to be heard and to be read, although we often read them on the page, but they're written to be heard and to be read in person or in a kind of oral medium. And the reason for that is that poetry is visceral in a way that perhaps other forms of writing are not. It really brings together our minds, our intellect, our heart and emotions, but also our bodies, because rhythm and sound are very important to poetry. And poetry creates a music. There's a reason poetry is a cousin to song, because song lyrics, of course, have a kind of built-in rhythm to them, but their rhythm can be accentuated or developed or accompanied by actual music, right? That is performed by musicians. Poems have to create the music with the language. So elements such as in some poems rhyme, but of course a lot of poetry written in the last 100 years does not rhyme. And a lot of poets writing today do not use rhyme a lot. So there are also other devices besides rhyme that can attune to our ears and attune to the rhythms of our bodies. And those devices include repetition, alliteration, assonance, which is repetition of similar consonant or vowel sounds, close rhyme or near rhyme that isn't quite rhyme, but it's close and our ear catches that. Just the rhythm of the language itself, of course, it has a kind of heartbeat effect on us. And I think these are the reasons that poetry is so important in our culture, because it really touches us emotionally because of that kind of bodily impact a poem has on us. This is the reason that poetry is so important, from everything to celebrations that we have as a culture or even as individuals, all the way to loss and grief and sadness. It expresses every kind of emotion on the gamut. And I do believe that poetry is something that kids in particular can tune into, because they like patterns. They like identifying patterns. They like hearing beats and those sorts of things. They like sort of singing along to language. And again, poetry kind of builds its own music. So it's meant in a way to be sung, even if we don't sing it in the traditional way of singing. I thought I would read a poem of mine that I think I wrote with some of those impacts of poetry in mind. It's a poem that I wrote and read around the time I was installed as the poet laureate. And I wanted it to reflect the land of the Pee Dee and the culture of the Pee Dee, but to do so through the kind of musical language of poetry. The title of the poem is Dee Psalm. This land sings its own poems, winds dancing through pine and sycamore, the gurgle of suburban creeks, the lusty roar of rivers, teaching bank and bridge whose boss at the stark slap of a giant storm. Low of cattle, screech of mockingbird, rustle of corn stalks, snap of a wayward turtle, whoosh of egret wings. But listen too for the human noises, midnight railroad whistles, thump of boot heel on concrete or stone, the holy chatter of clashing church bells come a Sunday noon. Where might sound take us? How is it that deep in sleep our ears plugged, we feel rhythms in muscle and bone. How is it that masked or muffled we hum, knowing something alive will catch the tune? And we must join the chorus, each of us following phoneme and syllable, fermata and crescendo. We need no conductor. We need only lift our voices to let the song carry us home. Please go out there and seek some poetry, read some poetry this National Poetry Month. And if you are on Facebook, please like the Poetry Across the Pee Dee Facebook page, which I run every week on Sundays. I share a different poem by usually a different poet with you. And we have occasional readings by poets in the Carolinas and potentially other areas around the country as well. And we'll be doing all kinds of interesting things, I think, over the summer on that page. So if you are on Facebook, like Poetry Across the Pee Dee. And my thanks to the Florence County Library for celebrating poetry, which is itself something we use, as I said, to celebrate our lives. And what a better way to do it than to go visit your library and read some poetry and read some other books as well. Celebrate learning through language. Take care. Bye-bye.